This is Albert.
And this is Barney.
From the Long Ball Futebol Podcast, and you're listening to the Seleção podcast.
Simões bending one for Torres. Eusebio. Oh my word! Have you ever seen anything like that?
Bem jogado por Simão, a passar por dois adversários, Simão a tentar oferecer o golo a Figo e a bola é golo! O golo de Figo!
Rui Costa já acreditou, vai tirar para o golo, atira, golo! 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 Cristiano Ronaldo, vai embora Cristiano Ronaldo! Bateu, golo, 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 golo!
Chuta! Gol!
And we welcome you to episode number 81 of the Seleção podcast, a proud partner of Portugal.net. My name is Danny Pinto. I am your host. And thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode, as it is another international break completed, another European qualifying campaign in terms of two group matches for Euro 2024 completed, and the Seleção is still perfect. 6 wins in 6 matches, 24 goals scored, 0 given up, 6 clean sheets so far to start the Roberto Martínez era as manager of the Seleção, and you could not ask statistically for a better start to this campaign. A record-setting campaign. Never has the Seleção started 5-0. They did that against Slovakia with their 1-0 victory away, and then of course the record-setting win. Now 6 for 6 to start any kind of qualifying campaign, whether it be European or World Cup. But the record-setting win also in terms of a result, 9-0 against Luxembourg. Goals all over the place in that match as well. We'll get to all of that here in just a few moments, as lots to discuss here on the Seleção podcast, episode number 81. I mentioned we were working on something a little special for this episode. We've got Albert and Barney from the Long Ball Futebol Podcast. They are joining us here. I would say in about 5-10 minutes here or so, as we get this episode off and running here. But we will I'll give you my thoughts on quickly my thoughts and a recap of the two matches against Slovakia and Luxembourg. Get Albert and Barney's thoughts on the goings on, and not only the Seleção, but with the international break being over, what to look forward to in Liga Portugal as matches get up and going again this weekend, as well as Champions League and Europa League also taking place before the next international break in October. So before we get to all of that, though, a reminder that you can follow us on Twitter, on X, at selecaopod, facebook.com/selecaopod, Instagram, at selecaopod. You can email the show, selecaopod@gmail.com, and of course, bookmark our website, selecaopod.com. We are back on YouTube, so please make sure you're clicking the like button on this episode. Make sure you are subscribing to us on YouTube, that you hit the alert button, the bell, so that anytime new content from our YouTube page pops up, you are aware, and then you click on that and you listen, and maybe you listen a few times to make sure you heard it all correctly, to be well informed. But subscribe to us on our YouTube page. Of course, subscribe to us and download all of our episodes via Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play. Anywhere and everywhere podcasts are available, go ahead and subscribe to us there. And if you can do it, if you find it in your heart, give us a 5-star rating on Spotify. Give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. Drop us a nice little note in Apple Podcasts too. That always helps the show become more visible to folks like ourselves who love discussing soccer, football, and especially of the Portuguese persuasion, as of course we are a Seleção, a national team, Portuguese national team podcast. But without further ado, let me give you guys just a quick little rundown of the two matches, the two results, the two wins for the Seleção. As again, 6 for 6. They've never started 5 wins, or 4 was the best they had ever done. 5 wins was the first time they had ever done that in any kind of qualifying campaign. And now they are 6 for 6, so that record continues on. But we'll go and talk about the Slovakia match first, which happened first. So we'll go in chronological order here. But let me give you the starting lineup first. It was Diogo Costa in goal, Diogo Dalot, Ruben Dias, Antonio Silva, João Cancelo, Bernardo Silva, João Palhinha, Bruno Fernandes, Vitinha, Cristiano Ronaldo, and Rafael Leão. Slovakia had its best chance, I would say, 1 minute before it was all decided, as their effort went and hit the outside of the post, and I would say about 30 seconds, 45 seconds, maybe about a minute later, in the 43rd minute, Bruno Fernandes would score the game winner from a little bit of a build-up or link-up play from Bernardo Silva, and he would score a goal from a pretty tough angle. Like when he first hit it, I didn't think there was much of an opportunity for it to go in, but all of a sudden you could just see like the pace of the shot was definitely there. Beat the Slovakian goalkeeper, and pretty much it was settled eventually anyway, because it would be 1-0 right before the half. It would be 1-0 at the half, and it would be 1-0 the final. And again, that gave Portugal its best start in terms of a qualifying campaign to that point. 5 wins out of 5 matches. Of course, we'd get another one a few days later against Luxembourg. The game itself, not a lot of great football, not a lot of great soccer. Again, much like Iceland, you had to the Seleção had to grind this one out. But I also think if we're being honest with ourselves, I think the 1-0 score line probably not a true indication of how of the opportunities, I guess, that the Seleção had built up and had created, especially in the second half, to try to get a second or even a third goal. They were there, but just the finishing in the final third was just a bit lacking. Cristiano Ronaldo, multiple opportunities that likely in years past he's converting, maybe not all of them, but a couple here or there, including one where missed opportunity, runs into the goalkeeper, gets or dives in, slides in, whatever it was, picks up his second yellow card during qualification. I believe that was in the 60th or 61st minute. His second yellow during qualification. He would then miss the Luxembourg match. And I know that there was like another opportunity involving Ronaldo and Bruno Fernandes and Bernardo Silva where, the buildup was coming, but just again, an off-target attempt by Cristiano. But with the exception of the Bruno goal, and I know Bruno is getting a lot of praise in these two matches, and he should be. For a second consecutive match, the offense left a lot to be desired. And it was a second consecutive 1-0 victory. Portugal had again beaten Iceland 1-0 thanks to a Ronaldo goal late in that one to get the victory. And these two 1-0 victories, again, probably against the on paper, maybe not in standings right now, but on paper, probably two of the, for sure, Slovakia. But two tougher matches than, again, playing Luxembourg and Liechtenstein. Those were obviously easier victories to come by. But at the end of the day, and we said this a lot with Nunsunch, so I temper this by saying this, but at the end of the day, 3 points are 3 points. 3 points were won. 3 points were won away. And, that's really, at the end of the day, all that matters. And then we were off to the record-setting night in Algarve. And let me give you the starting lineup there. Diogo Costa in goal once again. Nelson and Roberto Martínez making 5 changes, which I thought maybe because it's the opponent, maybe he's still trying to figure out what he has with this national team. Maybe it's a combination of both there. Maybe with Ronaldo out too, maybe there was more adjustments to make. But anyway, Diogo Costa in goal. Nelson Semedo getting the start in place of João Cancelo. Ruben Dias back in the defense. No Antonio Silva, Gonçalo Inácio, who would have a huge game. He would get to start along with Diogo Dalot, Danilo Pereira, Bruno Fernandes, Bernardo Silva, Diogo Jota. He would get a start after coming on. Did he come on in the last game before that? I don't know. I'll have to check my notes there. But Diogo Jota would get to start. Rafael Leão getting the start once again, and then Gonçalo Ramos in for Cristiano Ronaldo. Now, 9-0. Let me just go ahead and give you the synopsis here, and I've got our good friends at Squawka Live to assist us here. And let me just make sure I can bring all this up. Do I have the capability? I do. Give me a second here, as we're going to go with. And thank you, everyone who's watching this on YouTube. And my apologies for those who are watching this or who are listening to this via the podcast. But you see that 9 goals. Inácio off an assist from Bruno Fernandes. You would then have Gonçalo Ramos off an assist from Bernardo Silva. Gonçalo Ramos again with an assist from Rafael Leão, and then another Gonçalo Inácio goal, another assist from Bruno Fernandes, and it was 4-0 at the half. A good time to be called or to be named Gonçalo, and I tweeted in jest. I can only imagine that Gonçalo Guedes is hoping to get the call up in October to see if he can get in on this action at some point. But yeah, it was the Gonçalo show. I think I saw a tweet where it was Gonçalo 4, Luxembourg 0 at the half. But again, 4-0 at the half. It was pretty much over. Very, very much over after the second goal. And then it just the floodgates just opened up as it would then be Jota getting his first of 2. Another assist from Bruno Fernandes. Ricardo Horta would come off the bench with an assist from Diogo Jota. Jota would then get his second to make it 7-0. Bruno Fernandes would finally get on the score sheet as a goal scorer. An assist from Ricardo Horta. And then João Felix, who just got in and just put a rocket to the far right corner off of an assist from Ruben Neves. That would give Portugal their biggest win in Seleção history, 9-0. I believe there were a few 8-0 victories in that or in the history of the federation, but on the senior side anyway. But never a 9-0 game until that game against Luxembourg. So depending on when you're listening to it, we are recording on the 12th, so it'll be out on the 13th. So 2 days ago. Very similar again to or similar vibes, I would say, from the Switzerland match at the World Cup, where we went 6 on the board, and again without Cristiano Ronaldo. So again, that leaves a lot of discussion as to what that means, and I'll get to that in a little bit. But it was free-flowing, fluid football in that match against Luxembourg, and I am very well aware, and it was made very, very aware to me who we played in this 9-0 victory. I completely get that it was Luxembourg, but impressive nonetheless to score 9 goals, and in the manner in which it happened. It was fluid football. It was not stagnant. Was it easy? Yeah, it was easy, but I think it was the manner in which the football was being played. It wasn't just go straight ahead with no creativity. It was tremendous passing. It was run. I mean, not on the score sheet in terms of goals, but Rafael Leão up and down the left side of the field was unbelievable. And again, I believe in the match notes. I believe the defender for Luxembourg plays in the 3rd division of Germany. I get that, but still, just being able to see Rafael Leão in a second consecutive start, getting 2 starts in this qualifying period. I really enjoyed seeing his efforts, and you could just see just the speed and the length that he has. He doesn't look all that fast because his legs are not moving at a very fast rate. It's not like he's kind of chopping up his steps or anything, but like his strides are so long and he is so goddamn fast that he is by you before you finish blinking your eyes. And then it's all over. I really enjoyed watching the match against Luxembourg, and it's a bit of a preview of what might be. When, don't know. I don't think anyone knows. And yeah, you have to temper it by saying it is Luxembourg, but impressive, absolutely. And we should all be, as Seleção fans, be thrilled with this start under Roberto Martínez. But as I've said since he's been hired, and since this qualifying campaign has begun, and a little bit, we discussed it a little bit, I should say, with Albert and Barney here in a few moments, and with past guests, Roberto Martínez is going to be judged next summer in Germany at Euro 2024. Plain and simple. That's going to be where he's judged first. This was supposed to be I don't think anyone's expecting 9-0 ever. But we still haven't given up a goal. We're scoring at a tremendous rate. It is very similar to how he qualified during his time as manager of Belgium. Lots of goals, not a lot of goals given up, huge goal differential, top of the group. So the fact that he's doing this now with the Seleção shouldn't come as too much of a surprise, especially given the group that Portugal's in. But coming off the heels of, Fernando Santos, who, as of today, was let go by Poland after just 5 matches. And again, Twitter can be a very fun place. And I forget the person's name, so forgive me if you're listening. But he said the Federation took too long to let him go, and I said, which one? And he said both, and he's right on both. But we're not here to crap on Fernando Santos anymore. But all this to say, there's plenty of excitement, and there should be, given what we came off of with Fernando Santos football. And I'll just kind of call it that. There's creativity, there's flexibility that Roberto Martínez openly discusses, and then we can actually see it on the field. And it's exciting. Now, again, none of it matters until next summer in the grand scheme. Of course, it matters now because we're, success and wins buys you buy-in. And if these players on this roster are buying into what Roberto Martínez is selling, that can go a long way. How far? We'll find out next summer. But yeah, we'll see just how far this team can go next summer. But for right now, it's exciting times, and it's just fun to see this team do what we've always hoped that this team would do, especially against inferior opponents. Like, we would still find like some of these games against the likes of Luxembourg sometimes, and God, what were some of the other minnows? It doesn't matter, but like we'd have like a 2-0, a 3-0 victory. And it's like, yeah, 3 goals is good, but like you'd see other teams against similar competition put like 4, 5, 6, 7. It's like, why couldn't we do that? We had the firepower. Now we're seeing it, and it's exciting to see. So, again, as we currently sit, and I'll share the screen again with our viewers here of on YouTube. Where are we at here? Right there. Let's go ahead and share. As we go to the standings, let's see. Here we go. In Group J, Portugal right now sitting on 6 points, 6 wins, 24 goals scored, none given up, a plus 24 goal differential. They are sitting atop 18 points. Slovakia in second following their victory after their loss against Portugal. They are now sitting at 13 points. It is a race for second between Slovakia and Luxembourg. Luxembourg had won 3 straight games heading into the match against Portugal, but obviously they were thwarted quite easily. They sit on 10 points. Bosnia and Herzegovina, as well as Iceland, they are both on 6. And we bid adieu to Liechtenstein as they are officially eliminated from contention. They are they scored a goal, they got a goal, but they've also given up 19 of them, and they are 0 for 6 thus far in qualifying, and they are mathematically out of qualifying. Top 2 teams qualify in the group. It would take a disaster for Portugal not to qualify at this point. Mathematically, still have not done it. They could very well win the group by the end of the October matches. If they were to get to 24 points, can Slovakia, doing math, they have 25? Yeah, so stuff would have to go our way with Slovakia, and I believe we would have that control because as Portugal starts in October with their matches coming up in October, I should say, Portugal, it will host Slovakia. So let's say Slovakia loses to Portugal at home. Portugal would then be on 21 points. Slovakia would be on 8 points, or I'm sorry, on 13 points, an 8-point victory, or 8-point. Slow down, Danny. An 8-point advantage with 3 matches to go. I think a result would then a win against Bosnia and Herzegovina would lock up the group at 24 points for Portugal. But that's neither here nor there. We'll worry about October when October comes. But as of right now, things are looking tremendous for the Seleção, and as they should with the talent that this team currently has. It should be no surprise that this team is where they are. It's just good to see that they are doing it with such offensive firepower. That's been lacking for the majority, and I would say the latter part of the Nunsunch era. And it's just fun to see. So with that said, we will now head over to our interview with our now good friends, Albert and Barney, from the Long Ball Futebol Podcast. Make sure you follow that podcast on Twitter at Long Ball Futebol. That's LONGBALLFUTEBOL. We had a lot of fun discussing the Seleção and the goings on in Liga Portugal. So I hope you guys enjoyed the interview here with Albert and Barney of the Long Ball Futebol Podcast right here on episode number 81 of the Seleção Podcast.
And we continue on here on episode number 81 of the Seleção Podcast. If you guys are watching on YouTube, first, thank you for watching on YouTube. Second, please make sure you hit the like button and you're subscribing. And also, this is what my car looks like. There's the car seat for Lucas right there, and back there some soccer balls for practice later on today. But this was the only time I could get these next 2 gentlemen on the show, as we are 8 hours in terms of distance in terms of time distance here for to talk to my next guest here. You know them from the Long Ball Futebol Podcast. Please welcome to the Seleção Podcast for the first time. Give it up, guys, for Albert and Barney. Fellas, how we doing?
Good, man. I love that introduction. That was great. Thanks so much.
How do you guys like my car? Nice?
It looks great.
Very
it looks
nice.
great.
Does
So
it say,
you
does it,
do you
does it say dad?
It does. It does. Do you play football then? Because I can see you got footballs in there.
I'm, contrary to popular belief, I do know a little bit something about soccer, about football. I do teach. I'm coaching my son's under sevens, and we have a huge practice today. We got railroaded on Saturday. We got to go back to basics, as only 6 and 7 year olds can. So definitely a big day of training on the pitch today for the 6 and 7 year olds. That's for sure. But appreciate you guys coming on. Big fan of what you guys are doing, and I'm obviously so happy that another partnership with Tom Kundert and his great team at Portugal.net, and I'm glad that the three of us are part of that as well. So welcome to the show, both of you guys. Thank
you so much, man. It's an absolute pleasure, honestly. We were so happy when you messaged us to come on the show. So, yeah, we're really excited to be here.
Appreciate it. So Albert, we'll start with you. Obviously, you guys talk a lot about the Liga Portugal and the goings on with Benfica and Porto and Sporting and Braga and now Boa Vista, obviously.
Yeah.
But if you and then Barney, you can follow up as well. Just what were your thoughts on this now just completed international window where Portugal saw 2 more wins, 2 more shutouts, and complete control of their group, including just a record-setting display yesterday, as of this recording, against Luxembourg, where they beat them 9-0. What were your thoughts on the international break here?
I mean, 2 great results, 2 very different games, but nonetheless 2 great results. And to win every game in the qualification group so far, absolutely fantastic. Couldn't be going any better. And I think international football is so interesting because it's so different from league football, where you spend every day training with your teammates, training with your manager. When it comes to international football, you only get a short window to train with these guys, even if you know them well, even if you have a natural connection. You can't really replicate that instinct that comes with playing with the same players day in, day out on the training field, and then playing every weekend with the same guys. So, sometimes the performances can disappoint the fans in a sense, and I think that was the sense after the Slovakia game. But it's all about results when it comes to qualifying for a major tournament. It's all about getting points on the board. I think, of course, the Luxembourg performance, results, scoreline was perfect. Really, it was as good as you could have played that game, and as good a result as you could have hoped for. And in Slovakia, it's 1-0 against Slovakia away from home. On paper, you might look at that and think, could we have scored more goals? Should it have been a bigger scoreline? Should the team have looked a bit more fluid? But I think, like I said, this is international football. It's very different. It was the first game of the first international break of the season. So, it's the first time these players have played together for a little while. It's normal for them to be a bit rusty. And the most important thing is the 3 points to continue that perfect record. And, on your way to Germany 2024. So, it's all looking good.
Barney, what say you?
Well, I'm looking at the 2 11s that Martin has put out. And instinctively, I was looking at the Slovakia game. I thought that's probably your strongest 11. That's what it feels like to me anyway. Particularly Diogo Costa coming into goal. I really like the midfield with Paulinho, Vitinha, and Fernandes. Like those 3 names, I really like all those players. So seeing them all get together in midfield, I was like, yeah, that's good. And then, of course, Leao and Silva on the wings and Ronaldo through the middle. It feels like that was, I don't know, I was expecting maybe more goals, a better performance. But like Albert said, when you look at it, Slovakia away, you're just still coming away with a win and 3 points, which is ultimately what you want. It's just when you contrast that to the Luxembourg game, when you just see this, the football and the aggression of just getting
they were relentless, weren't they? And that's, I don't know about you, but as a football fan, that's what you always want your team to be playing like that. You want to see them like that just like, just going and going and going and like not holding back at all. So in that sense, that was obviously the more enjoyable game to watch. So I guess what I'm trying to say is it was just interesting to see those different players come to the front, right? Like look at Ignacio, look at Gonzalo Ramos, perhaps players that Martinez has seemed to have taken a little time into bringing in. And I've sort of got the opinion that Martinez doesn't quite trust the Portuguese league. As I think there could be one or two more players in this squad. But it was interesting that Ignacio was one of those players. Gonzalo Ramos, although he's at PSG now, but had the season he had last year at Benfica in Portugal. It's interesting that those players seem to came to the forefront in that Luxembourg game and just play so well, and Ricardo Horta as well getting a goal. So as a Liga Portugal fan, I was very, very, very happy with the Luxembourg game and seeing those players stand out.
Yeah, you mentioned something about just the just continuous attack yesterday, and again, an opponent like Luxembourg can give you that opportunity, considering if you score early and you score a couple, they're coming off of consecutive victories, so like they're fighting for something here in the group, whether it's for first place. That's kind of done and dusted, in my opinion. They're now competing with Slovakia for that second automatic spot for Euro 2024. So I think I think my favorite goal, I think, from yesterday, and just the way it all developed, was the second one, where Bruno Fernandes gets the ball, finds Bernard Silva. Bernard Silva never hesitates. It's a direct first touch to Gonçalo Ramos, and he puts it away to make it 2-0. And I just thought just that type of style of play was very appealing, and something that I'd love to see more of going forward. No matter who's in, who's playing up top, so or in the lineup in general. So I'm just enjoying. I really just enjoyed what yesterday was. But you're right. Like you maybe could have seen a couple more goals against Slovakia, but at the end of the day, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, so I'm going to have to do this on top of my head. But it's six wins, 6 clean sheets. I believe 24 goals scored, and complete control with 4 matches left to go. I mean, for Roberto Martínez, and I'll ask you guys your opinion of him here, but you couldn't have asked for a better start to his reign as Seleção manager. What was your guys' initial thoughts on his hire, and then what have you thought of the job he's done thus far?
Well, I think my opinion of his hiring changed very quickly, because my immediate reaction was kind of surprised. I don't think anyone saw it coming, and I was surprised in a negative way. I did think it was a strange choice. For me, my feeling at the time was that they'd gone for a household name over actually really thinking about who the best manager was going to be. So initially I was quite surprised and I didn't like it at all. And then actually very quickly I really mellowed out, and I thought, you know what, I think that's quite a big overreaction. Roberto Martínez is a very, very competent manager, highly respected manager in world football. He's managed for so long in the Premier League, and his peers throughout his time in the Premier League will hold him in very high regard. I think the problem is that he comes off the back of a period of time managing Belgium, which a lot of people see as a failure, right? A lot of people seem to sort of say, "Oh, how could you not win something with this golden generation of Belgian players?" I have to say, just my personal opinion is that I've never quite agreed with that. I never thought Belgium were quite as good as people thought. I thought they were an excellent team, right? They had loads of world-class players, but to win a major tournament, the types of teams that win major tournaments, and it's the hardest thing to do in football. Again, maybe not a controversial opinion again. I think winning the World Cup is harder than winning the Champions League. I think, and maybe the Euros as well. And so I don't think he did all that bad with Belgium at all. They had this group of exciting players for the first time. There were still holes in that team, especially defensively and in goal. So it wasn't this perfect team that everyone was talking about. And I think he did I think he did a decent job, and I also think it's maybe worth mentioning that he was kind of more of an outsider as Belgian manager. I don't think he was as familiar with those players as he will be with the Portugal national team. So I think it does make sense to bring in Martinez, because I think he's a manager perhaps with something to prove, and I think he's coming into a team with as good a generation as Belgium had, and he'll want to prove that he can do good things with that team. And I think the start's been fantastic. I mean, like you said, you ran off those statistics. You can't argue with those at all. So far, so good, essentially, is the take-home message. And I think things look really good. It's going to be different going into the major tournament. He's going to have some decisions to make about which players he picks, because he's kind of got, I mean, let's face it, European qualification for a lot of teams is not that tough, right? You're in these groups with the likes of Slovakia and Luxembourg. It's not like South American qualifying where every team is of a good standard. You do have these games in European qualifying where you're playing pretty small teams, and you can you do get a few freebies in qualifying, which allow you to play with the team and try new players. So he's obviously not properly been tested yet. It will be really interesting to see how he does in Euro 24. But so far, I think he's got the team playing decent football. They haven't clicked all the time, but like I said, international football is so different from club football. You have so much less time with the team, so it's difficult to judge a national team in the same way you would judge a league team. So getting to that tournament and how he manages the team through that major tournament will be how he's judged. I don't think we can quite judge him yet, although from what he's done so far, it has been pretty good.
Yeah, I would say I agree with a lot of Albert said there. I think he's clearly. I think the thing that sort of quantified for me with this appointment to Portugal is just he clearly is a really competent manager, right? Particularly at international level. That seems to be his way, the way he wants to be at the international level rather than at club football. And I think I was expecting. I don't know. I perhaps I was blinded by his time at Belgium, but I was just expecting him to come with quite a rigid way of how he wanted to play, and I've actually been quite pleasantly surprised with what he's been doing with the players at his disposal in Portugal. I like what, particularly in the midfield areas. I think he hasn't been afraid to sort of assess his options and not just stick to. I guess what I'm trying to say there, I feel like there's been a transition, hasn't there? There's been players brought in and players taken out, which I think's what Portugal have needed as well. Al was talking about the sort of Belgium's golden generation that Martinez had at his disposal. I think it's Portugal in a really interesting situation with the young players that they are starting to unearth, particularly in the defence. I'm sure we were going to talk more about them, but Inácio and Antonio Silva, such exciting players to have coming into the team. And I include Vitinho as a sort of youngster that I have such high hopes for, because I think he's such a special player, particularly. I think he's quite a rare midfielder that you don't get so often in terms of what he offers. His creativity, his passing. He's such a, I don't know. I struggle with words for him because he's such a unique player. He's so. I think he's really special. So I think the way Vitinho will be used and brought into this team, and perhaps that balance with working with Fernandes will be interesting. But we have seen that. We have seen Vitinho come in, and then I mentioned Fernandes there. I think that's probably particularly these last two games. Fernandes at Man U, I think, he just seems to go hot and cold, and sometimes people question about how the way he's being used at Man U, and perhaps his consistency and etc. But Fernandes in these two games, I mean, it was unbelievable in moments, and to see, I feel like Martinez is sort of, he obviously had that with De Bruyne and that sort of special player in midfield, and then sort of trying to get the best out of him. He seems to be doing it with Fernandes, and Fernandes really shone for me, particularly against Luxembourg.
Yeah, I like that comparison with De Bruyne, with how he was trying to be used by Roberto Martínez while Martinez was at Belgium. Again, I think Roberto Martínez has inherited in two separate international stints just an embarrassment of riches in terms of talent. I think he is in a much better position in terms of the talent he's inherited here with Portugal. But I think since his his hiring. I think the overall opinion of Roberto Martínez is that we won't know really anything until that ball is kicked off next summer in these in Euro 2024, because getting there should not have been the question, and it's something that Fernando Santos was big on saying. He's my job is to get us to qualify for these tournaments. No, with the talent that you're that you have, it's I mean, that's a bare minimum, is not, and it shouldn't be something that you're held that should be held against you or in your favor, I guess. Against you is if you don't make it. But I just, we're not going to know much about what we have in Roberto Martínez as a manager until the tournament next summer. But I agree with both of you in terms of the, getting these younger players a chance to shine a little bit, like Inácio. I believe, and again, I don't have it in front of me, I believe started these two matches for Roberto Martínez. Vitinha got the start in Slovakia. Antonio Silva got the start in Slovakia as well. There is it's the integration of players on the fringe, like a Ricardo Horta. We'll see what happens with some other players here in the next few call-ups, as Portugal has two matches in the middle of October and middle of November to finish out qualifying. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Again, it's good to see the results on paper. This obviously is not going to be a fair reflection of what they are to expect to see in the tournament next summer. Me personally, I believe the Euro is the European Championship is the toughest, just because I think top to bottom, the tournament itself is the toughest to win, solely based on the quality of the teams in it. But that's another discussion for another day. But I think we're all of the same opinion here that it's great right now, but the substance is still to come, and that's okay. That's why you position yourself to get a 6 out of 6, so that maybe you can see what you have later on in qualifying, when you don't have the pressure of having to qualify in these last few matches. We're talking with Albert and Barney of the Long Football Podcast. You can follow the Long Ball Futebol Podcast. My apologies, boys. On Twitter at Long Ball Futebol. You guys have a tremendous following, and I just love seeing the interaction, or hearing the interaction that you guys have with your show. Give me just a quick little synopsis of what you guys have seen and what you guys have liked as we switch to Liga Portugal. What you have seen in the first 4 matches that has been a surprise to you, whether it's been a positive or a negative.
Wow. Okay. Where to start? Well, I suppose let's start with last season's champions, Benfica. Obviously, the big surprise with Benfica was that they lost the first game of the season. That was against Boavista, who incredibly sit top of the table.
Top of the league, guys.
Genuinely incredible. And one of the things that me and Barney do on the show is we do like a season preview show every year. We don't hide away from putting our necks out on the line, and we do pre-season predictions where we predict like the top 6 and the bottom 3. And Barney, did we both put Boavista in our bottom 3? I think we both thought they were going to be relegated. And here they are at the top of the table, riding high. They've had a transfer ban, so they've not signed a single new player. They've lost key players on free transfers. They've had to bring people in, who were previously on loan and through the youth system. And Petit has done it again. He's got these boys top of the table, and it's not a fluke. They look really good. They look really strong. They had a little bit of a helping hand with that win against Benfica. They played against 10 men in the second half, but nonetheless, they were still excellent. And in all their other games, they've been excellent as well. So Boavista have been a real surprise. Benfica obviously bounced back from that loss pretty well. So they had a few teething problems at the beginning of the season. Me and Barney were talking about, do they know their best 11? Does Roger Schmidt, know his best team, etc., etc. But they bounced back from that loss, and they've won the next 3 games. So they look pretty good. I'll let Barney take Porto. I feel bad to hand over to a negative, but I'll let Barney take Porto.
Well, yeah, I mean,
they're tied for the league lead.
I know.
Yeah.
Negative.
But here it comes, I guess.
Yeah. Well, they're just not playing great football. They seem to be really struggling. And Conceição is, he's the miracle man in terms of getting late goals. Very much reminds me of like Fergie time or, Alex Ferguson's Man U. Just they were always able to find a way right at the last minute. And it's an interesting situation because, like I said, they're not playing attractive football. They seem to be, obviously, they've lost big players during this window. Haven't really replaced, although they have brought a few players within the league. We're excited to see the likes of Fran Navarro, who's previous at Gil Vicente, come in as striker. Ivy Jamie as well, another Spanish player who they signed for Famalicão, brought in to potentially replace Otavio after he departed. I think the most exciting thing after Benfica, who both Albert and I tipped to run away with this league this season, although it seems at the moment a little bit tighter than that, is Porto, Sporting and Braga. I think it's going to be a very close race throughout the whole season. So as I mentioned, Porto's struggling but still getting results. Sporting look improved, having sort of splashed the cash, which they haven't done for a few seasons. Brought in two big players, Swedish Gyökeres and Hjulmand, a Danish midfielder. And Braga is sort of a team that we've really championed last season. We're really happy for them to sort of disrupt the big three, if you will. Great players in that team. They've kept Ricardo Horta, who's obviously had his call up to the national team as well, and it's sort of really their talisman, but they've sort of improved around him and taken that step, and obviously in the Champions League now, which we're really excited to see them in. It's all poised at the moment. Everything's sort of coming together. It looks like it's going to be very tight at the top. And of course, as Albert mentioned, we've got a few great stories in the likes of Boa Vista looking really good as well.
Yeah, and who knows how long the Boa Vista story is gonna be for the entire or for the remaining part of the league. But they have a very Famalicão-esque kind of start to this season from a few years ago, where they just out of nowhere just stayed towards the top half or top 4, top 5 until about, I would say, 4 or 5 weeks to end the season. But different ways of doing it there as well. But I would. There's a great video out, and Cristiano Oliveira of the Benfica podcast sent it over to me, where there's a gentleman who is wearing, and I forget what it is, but it's 3 pieces of supporter clothing of Benfica, Sporting, and Porto. And some guy goes, "What's going on here? What's going on here?" And he goes, "I'm always happy. I'm always happy." So, I messaged back to him like, "Well, I guess they have to add maybe some Boa Vista garb to the outfit there." But it's been cool to see them thus far. Obviously, not in that first week as a Benfiquista myself, them getting the win there. But obviously, it's always good to see these good stories in a league that is dominated primarily by the big three. So. In terms of the transfer window, who are just a couple of players that you guys are excited to see come into the league, and maybe a couple that you're disappointed that saw themselves leave?
I mean, the obvious place to start, Mr. Angel Di Maria, who came in to Benfica. I think it's the biggest transfer we've had into the Premier League for quite some time. It's he's a bona fide football legend. He won the most recent World Cup with Argentina. He's played for some of the biggest clubs around the world, and he comes into the league despite his age. I think he's 36. Despite his age, still a player of immense quality. So very excited to see him. I know we were negative on Porto a second ago, but they do have a new kind of midfield pairing that I think is going to be quite interesting to watch. They've signed Alan Varela, a quite combative defensive midfielder from Boca Juniors, and then they signed Nico Gonzalez, who's more of a playmaking, creative central midfielder from Barcelona, and it looks like that's going to be a new central midfield pairing for Porto, which they've only tested out briefly in their recent games when those players came off the bench, but already looks very promising. And I think Braga as well, you can say, have had a very interesting window. They signed quite a few players, 2 former Seleção players in João Moutinho and José Fonte. But also they brought in Bruma and Nyakate, who was on loan with them last season. They made permanent. Victor Gomez, who for me was the best right back in the league last season. He's there. So that's quite a few players. I don't want to steal them all, but I'll let you choose. So.
I wanted to jump in there because I wanted to ask Danny about Ronnie Lopez. Has he ever played for the national team? Because he's a player that I'm really excited to see. I've heard so much about him. Did he get moved to Sevilla?
I want to say he has maybe a cap. Maybe.
Right.
I'd have to look. I think in the heyday of friendlies, I think he may have got in. I don't know for sure. I'll get that answer for you at the end of the episode. But yeah, if he has, they haven't been a lot.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to see him because I've just heard so many sort of stories about him, and him coming back to Portugal is quite exciting to me. And then to continue on the sort of transfer chat, I think there's been a lot of teams lower down the league who've made some interesting signings. We've seen sort of players, ex-B team players who've maybe gone abroad and come back. Gil Vicente have had a really good window. They've sort of is it Buta, I think it's for the under 21s. I think he's come from Udinese. He's had a great start to the season. Looked like a really exciting player. And then Casapia as well. I don't know if listeners will be very familiar with Casapia, but like the team that they've got, Yuki Soma is a player they had last year, but they managed to secure him permanently, and he's a Japanese winger who I really really like. I think he's a good little player. That's the thing with this league is that the players come from all over the place, and we're seeing more and more like the clubs looking at different areas of the world to sort of find talent and other players. And yeah, it's been a really interesting window.
We're talking with Albert and Barney from the Long Ball Futebol Podcast. You can follow them on Twitter at Long Ball Futebol. And of course, obviously, if you're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, anywhere and everywhere the podcasts are available, make sure you guys are subscribing to them and showing them your support and following them on Twitter as well. Champions League and European football are upon us on the return of this international break. I believe matches start on September the 19th and 20th. Got a little bit of a rundown here. So Porto kicks off away on the 19th, away to Shakhtar, and then on October the 4th, they're home to Barcelona. Benfica start on September the 20th at home against Red Bull Salzburg, and then October the 3rd away to Inter Milan. Braga is hosting Napoli at home on September the 20th, and then October the 3rd they are away to Union Berlin. And then you're in Europa League action. We have Sporting on the 21st away to Sturm Graz, and then home to Atalanta on October the 5th. On top of all that, you have the first version, the first Clásico of the season on October the 1st, as Benfica hosts Porto. You'll never guess, guys. They still don't have a time for that match.
I mean, this is a recurring theme for this league. It's incredible.
It's unbelievable. But all that to say, a lot in this upcoming, domestic and club window, if for lack of a better term, for a lot of the for the top three here, and then obviously with Braga in Champions League competition too. What are you guys most looking forward to as this next phase of the club season, which I believe ends, the weekend of the 7th and 8th until the next international break? What are you guys most looking forward to here in this next month or so?
Always, this part of the season I always find quite difficult because it is quite disrupted with quite a few international breaks. I think you probably highlighted the two main things we've got to look forward to, really. Obviously, the first Clásico of the season and the return of European football. I mean, we all watched the European draws recently. It starts to make it feel real, and I know, there's some excitement because Braga are in the Champions League for the first time in a little while, although they've got a very, very tough group. But I think it's a group that they, some big games against Real Madrid and Napoli and even Union Berlin will be a tough game. So that's exciting. And And yeah, I think, like I said, this part of the season we're kind of just waiting to get into the rhythm, get into a groove, because you want to be looking at the table with 10 games played, 15 games played. That's when you start to get a real read of the season, how these teams are doing, because we've got a few early contenders for exciting stories like Boavista, but we kind of want to allow these teams a few games breathing space to really show us what they're about. And equally at the bottom end of the table, we've got teams like Shavs who've lost all 4 games this season and looking in a really bad place. And, they will be a team, I don't know, maybe they'll be happy to have an international break to get on the training ground and improve. But equally, I feel like these teams, if you're in a rut, you want to get out of it. You want some momentum. So, yeah, we're just really waiting for this season to kind of kick into gear and we get a long run of games so we can get a good look at how the table's shaping up.
Yeah, I think Roger Smith, the Benfica manager, sort of spoke about this already. Like he's, after these 4 games, he sort of said, "Well, look, once we're back after the international break, that's when things get going. They're going to have to be juggling the midweek games of Europe, as are Braga, Sporting, and Porto. So that's where we're really going to see the sort of the squads come into play and how really see things pan out. I think, yeah, as I mentioned, the sort of lower end of the table teams." We saw last year with Paso de Ferreira and Marítimo just get lost. They just couldn't get a win for like 9 or 10 games, and it was impossible for them to claw it back. So, as Albert alluded, Chavez could be in that situation, although they've been very active in the transfer window, so could come back a refreshed team. There's been a few teams in this league who look like they've needed the international break to reset. Vitória de Guimarães, I would include in that. We had real high hopes for them, but the start of the season didn't pan out, and their manager Moreno was sacked, and they brought a new manager from Brazil, so they'll be looking to come back and try and get back up into European spots, because they haven't been able to secure fifth spot for a couple of seasons now. So that's I think they've got the squad to do it and the talent. So that'll be interesting to see. And to go back to the Champions League, I have real high hopes for Portugal in the in Europe as a whole this season. I really think Benfica can do something, particularly as we talked about the signing of Angel Di Maria and generally their transfer business. They look in a really strong position. I'm hopeful Porto as well can progress. Braga perhaps not; they've got a very tough group. But Sporting in the Europa League feels like an opportunity for them to go really deep in that competition. And I think they've certainly looked improved this season. As I mentioned, the signings they've made, and Amarin's still there as well, sort of figuring out his best way he wants to play. So yeah, I think that European competition could be good for Portugal this season, because we need the coefficient points, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. And we want no part of the conference league apparently. So that's been a bugaboo there for a little bit. We're talking, of course, with Albert and Barney of the Long Ball Futebol Podcast. Follow them on Twitter at Long Ball Futebol. Boys, let's talk about how the Long Ball Futebol Podcast came to be. The synopsis of the podcast: a weekly podcast by two brothers about all things football in Portugal. How did these two brothers decide on creating this podcast?
It's quite a long story, but I guess it kind of starts with me, and it starts with more than my connection to Portuguese football, my connection with Portugal, the place first. It's a long story. I'll try and not drag out too long. Essentially, I started learning Portuguese at university, but I was learning Brazilian Portuguese, and that was for a variety of reasons. But what quickly happened was I realized that I wanted to go and try and speak the language in the country. I don't know if you've ever checked the flight prices from London to Brazil. It's quite expensive, but going from London to Lisbon is very accessible, nice, easy, short flight, only a couple of hours. And so I went to Portugal for the first time. Really loved the place, and realized very quickly that I was going to shift for linguistic reasons. I was going to shift to learning to speak European Portuguese because I was going there more often, and I was deliberately going by myself for these kind of 3-day excursions to try and basically go throw myself in and try and speak as much as possible without any help. And because I was by myself, I was spending a lot of time in restaurants by myself, And the thing I love about restaurants in Portugal is that they always have the football on the TV, which is something we don't have in the UK, right? If you go into a UK restaurant, it's very, very rare they have any kind of sport on the telly. So I was watching a lot of Portuguese football that way. And then when the pandemic came around, it was, sad time for a lot of reasons, but also it meant we couldn't travel. And so I was watching a lot of Portuguese football on the TV to kind of keep that connection alive a little bit. And me and Barney were just chatting a lot, and I know Barney, like me, is basically just a big football nerd who's happy to get on board with any kind of football, niche football, and yeah, it just kind of grew from there, and here we are. I think we realized quite quickly that when we started the podcast, we didn't want to position ourselves as we're people that you need to listen to about Portuguese football. We know what we're talking about and you should listen to us. We basically wanted to listen to a podcast in English about Portuguese football, which didn't really exist. And so we started it and we tried to make it as kind of friendly as possible. It's, it's not like, we're not trying to tell people what to think or what's going on. We just try and have a chat about what we've watched at the weekend. And we quite quickly learned that there's a community out there of people whose first language is English, but who follow for a variety of reasons the Portuguese league. And over the last, this is our 4th season doing it now. So over the last 3 seasons, we've been really pleasantly surprised to build a little community of listeners, and it's been honestly absolutely fantastic. And my love for Portuguese football has never been higher, really.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I add is Albert Sports Leyton Orient, who currently play in League One in England, I don't really have a specific team that I've supported, but I've just always loved football. And so to sort of have a focus on something a bit different from just watching the Premier League, it was really fun. And look at the league we've chosen. It's, if you want drama, if you want stories, if you want it's a perfect place to land. So it's been so entertaining. I've loved getting to know all these teams and their histories, and of course, we're treated to so many great matchups throughout the year as well, with the big three and Braga as well. It's a great place to watch football, and really, you can just enjoy the games. There's always something going on.
Yeah, and Albert, I want to go back to something that you said, that is kind of one of the reasons why I started my podcast too. Was, I am first generation born here in the United States. My parents are from the Azores. And my dad specifically instilled a love of soccer, of football for me, and it was Benfica, and then it was the national team. And with the emergence of the national team since 2000, it's been I just wanted to immerse myself in as much of that information and follow it as much as I could. But I think I speak Portuguese pretty well. But there's nuance with the language that you miss sometimes with the coverage, or even just with the written word, that if it was in English, maybe we would be able to follow it better and understand it better. So we mentioned Tom at the beginning of the podcast, but it was coverage like his, and being able to get that information in English that was the catalyst for me to start this podcast, for you guys to start your podcast, and just to give English-speaking fans of Portuguese football and of national team football an outlet that we can provide an understanding and just more informational with a little bit of an opinion, and that's why I've enjoyed what you guys have been doing so much, and I hope people are enjoying what I'm doing here with my podcast. As well. And then you guys have a Patreon. I'll let everybody know how you can become an LBF sócio.
Yeah, so it's just Patreon/Long Ball Futebol, and we're on there. We like it's a very reasonable price. We're not trying to become millionaires. It's more than just to cover,
You're gouging the public, boys. You're gouging the public.
I think it's only like $1.50 in the US, so it's pretty much just to help us cover a few of the little costs that we do, but it's good fun. And I tell you what, we have a predictions league on there where all the patrons predict all the results of the weekend, and you get a point system. I think we thought it was going to be a bit of fun. Let me tell you, it's heating up. So it gets pretty serious. So it's and we're doing that all this season. And I think we're going to do quite a big prize at the end of the season. It might be like a football shirt or something. So it's basically just a lot of fun, and it's it tends to be the people that have listened to us the longest who know us quite well, and we have quite a tight knit community on there, which is nice.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you guys coming on. Appreciate what you guys do for the game of football for Portuguese fans, and especially the English speaking ones. It's a, as you mentioned, there is a community out there very passionate, either one way or another, that lets us know what they're feeling, and if we could be an outlet for them, and sharing that passion and sharing that love for the culture, for the football. I think we're all in a better spot for it. So, Albert, Barney, my thanks to both of you guys for making time here and being on the episode. Appreciate your thoughts, and look forward to having you guys back on very soon.
Thank you so much, Dan. It was a real pleasure.
Yeah, thank you, Dan, man. Thanks so much.
And our thanks once again to Albert and Barney from the Long Ball Futebol Podcast. Again, follow them on Twitter at Long Ball Futebol. That's LONGBALLFUTEBOL. A lot of fun, hooking up with those guys, and appreciate them making time. I was taking my lunch. I took my lunch break, I should say. Went to my car. We recorded that interview, and those guys were awesome to talk to, and I look forward to collaborating with them again very, very, very soon. So. I wanted to get some corrections, a couple from the interview with Albert and Barney, and then a couple from the previous episode. First thing, Ronnie Lopes, he does have 2 senior caps. Ronnie Lopes mentioned, Barney was asking about Ronnie Lopes. Yeah, he has 2 senior caps. I believe the last one was back in 2018. I also mentioned in the interview with Albert and Barney that Gonçalo Inácio had started both of the matches in this international break against Slovakia and Luxembourg. That is incorrect. Antonio Silva started the game against Slovakia, not Gonçalo Inácio. Gonçalo Inácio did feature in a 1-0 victory in qualifying. That was the game previous to this international break. When Ronaldo, off of an Inácio assist, scored the game-winning goal late against Iceland, not Slovakia. Both those matches were 1-0, but not the 1-0 match against Slovakia. So Gonçalo Inácio not the starter in 2 consecutive matches here in this international window. In the previous episode, I'd mentioned that Nations League matches were going to be prior to Euro 2024. That is incorrect. Those matches will begin after Euro 2024 in September. I don't believe we have groups yet, but if we do, you know what? I'll correct that in the next episode if I need to. And then I had mentioned wondering how Roberto Martínez had done in qualifying during his time, excuse me, with Belgium. And again, it's very similar to what he's doing now with the Seleção, but I wanted to give you guys the numbers. In World Cup 2018 qualifying, 9 wins, 1 draw in 10 matches, 43 goals scored, 6 given up, a goal differential of plus 37. In Euro 2020 qualifying, he was 10 for 10, 10 wins, 0 losses, 0 draws, 40 goals scored, only 3 given up, another plus 37 in terms of goal differential. And then in qualifying for this last World Cup, 8 matches, 6 wins, 2 draws, 25 goals scored, 6 given up, with a goal differential of a plus 19. So in 28 matches as a manager of Belgium in World Cup and European qualifying, 28 matches, 25 wins, 3 draws. So he has yet to suffer a defeat as a national team manager in either World Cup or European qualification groups. Those teams, the Belgian teams, have scored, in 28 matches, 108 goals, only given up 15, with a plus 93 goal differential. So very similar to what Portugal is doing now. If I had to do the quick math, 24 and 108 is 132, still at 15 goals given up. So 24 and 93 is 117. And the 6 wins in qualifying puts him at 34 matches, 31 wins, and 3 draws. So dominating in terms of the statistical aspect of things. Yeah, Roberto Martínez is quite comfortable in European and World Cup qualifying. But again, none of that matters until we get to the tournament next summer in Germany. Some other Seleção news and Portuguese news. The under 21s, they are in action, and they have started, I should say, their qualifying campaign for Euro 2025. And so far, so good, as the Rui Jorge led under 21s. They, as I scroll over here, 2 wins thus far, 2 victories in 2 matches, 8 goals scored, none given up, a +8 and 6 points. They sit atop Group G in the 2025 UEFA European Under 21 Championship qualification. In their group, Portugal, Greece, Faroe Islands, Andorra, Belarus, and Croatia. As you can see, if you're watching on YouTube, not everyone has played only 2 games. Croatia's only played 1, but Andorra and Belarus have played 5. Faroe Islands have played 3. So, yeah, a bit of an anomaly there. But Portugal began on September the 8th with a 3-0 victory at home against Andorra, and then followed that up with a victory, as of this recording today, on September the 12th, a 5-0 victory away to Belarus. So, Rui Jorge and his group of young men are off to a very good start here for qualifying for 2025. As for the women, they are beginning the group play in the inaugural Women's UEFA Nations League. Francisco Net, he will call up his roster this coming Friday, September the 15th. In Portugal's group, and we mentioned this in the previous episode, but it's France, Norway, and Austria. Portugal will open away to France on September the 22nd, I believe. Let me make sure I got that right here in my notes. Yes, September the 22nd, away to France, and then they will play at home on September the 26th against... Let me just scroll down, Danny. How about that? Yeah, September the 22nd, away to France, and then they play Norway on September the 26th at home. And then congratulations to the under-19 futsal team, men's futsal team. They are the European champions as they beat Spain earlier this week. Maybe I believe this past weekend. Being down 2-0, came back to win the European championship for the under-19 futsal. 6-2, they beat Spain. So, congratulations to them. And again, always good to see any kind of Seleção get their victory and get their championships. And I even saw a tweet. I didn't follow up much on it, but even saw a tweet where it looks like the men's rugby team for the Seleção are starting to do something. Didn't look into it much, but some of the players from the national team. Wishing them all the best. So we too wish them all the best, even though I may not know what they're doing. So take that one for what it's worth. Lastly, I want to talk about the tweet that set Seleção Twitter on fire. Not really, but it was a hell of a response that I got from the tweet. Let me see if I could pull up the tweet here. Again, my thanks to those who are just listening and not watching on YouTube. I know this can be sometimes a little bit of it can be annoying, to be perfectly honest. But I appreciate it. But here's the tweet. First of all, look at that, 10.6 thousand views. Holy crap! But that's not why I wrote it. Believe me, that's not why I wrote it. But the tweet goes like this. If you're not on YouTube, it says, "I think we've perhaps reached the moment with Cristiano Ronaldo that we once reached with Fernando Santos. Thank the man for everything he's done for the Seleção and all of Portugal, but also be okay with saying that the team may be better off without him now. Yes or no? So there was a response. There was much responding to this tweet. And I got a lot more of a response to this tweet than I really thought I was ever going to get. And it's I got a wide range of responses, from being told that I was ungrateful for possibly ever thinking this way, to folks just disagreeing with me and providing me with sound reasons as to why they disagree with me, which really is all I ever kind of want, right? And those who agreed with my tweet again, and I said may. I didn't say it is, but but those who felt that I was onto something. You guys are my favorite. Just kidding. So I thought I would take this time on the pod because hell, I'm the host, I'm the producer, I'm the be all end all of this podcast. I say what goes on and what does not go on. I say that very humbly, by the way. No bullshit. I really do. But I thought I would take the time to not double down on what I tweeted out, because I did say may. I'm not saying it's time, but just to perhaps explain kind of the thinking behind the tweet in a longer form that Twitter and these thumbs just don't provide. So let me first address the ungrateful comments, because there actually were a couple of them. First of all, though, that's a joke. Ungrateful, please. No, that's not real life. This podcast doesn't exist without the existence of Cristiano Ronaldo and everything he's done for the Seleção. Ungrateful is the furthest thing that I am when it comes to what Cristiano Ronaldo has meant to me as a fan of this national team. And Jesus, look at the jersey. Look at the jersey behind, like right in the middle here. I got scarves. I don't know where I'm pointing. Got scarves over here. There's a name on it. Listen, ungrateful is the least that I am. I'm actually the probably the exact opposite of that. So I thought ungrateful was out of bounds. You're entitled to your opinion. I just completely disagree with it, and we'll just go from there. What I proposed yesterday kind of stems from something that, excuse me, that's kind of been discussed on the podcast for the last year and a half, maybe almost 2 years. When either I or guests that I invite to be on the program, we began discussing, like, perhaps it's time for Cristiano Ronaldo to not be either an automatic starter, or at least if he's going to start, come off the bench instead of, playing the entire 90 in every match. And then the latter, and not just on this podcast, but on social media, and it really started to gain traction during World Cup qualifying and the World Cup itself. And obviously never more famously than when Fernando Santos decided to bench Ronaldo for the Switzerland match in the round of 16, where Portugal won, and the quarterfinal loss against Morocco that obviously Portugal lost. Ronaldo would come off the bench in both of those matches. Didn't need his help really, obviously, in the Switzerland match. He came on, I believe, in the 50th or the 51st in the Morocco match. But, came on as a substitute. His legacy in the world of soccer, in the world of football, in the world of sports is undeniable. And it forever will be. Especially it will forever be from in regards to people from Portugal with a Portuguese heritage behind us. From Portugal, from California like myself, from folks back east, from folks in Canada, from the Azores, to Portuguese people living all over the world. his legacy, especially from Portuguese people, is cemented forever. Okay? Eric Krakauer is famous on this podcast for saying this, that, and I'm paraphrasing here, Cristiano Ronaldo put the country of Portugal on the map, not the national team, not just the national team, I should say. He put the entire country on the map. And the pressure of that, only the GOATs, only the greatest of all time. Greatest? The GOATs. Only those players like him can handle that kind of pressure. That is undeniable pressure that only a few can take on their shoulders, and he has. And he has, absolutely. But I believe that we have reached a point, not only in his career, but also with the current state of this national team, that we are closer to a Seleção without CR7, and I'm not completely convinced that it wouldn't be for the better. Okay? Now, if we were having this discussion 3, 4, 5 years ago, I would tell myself that I was crazy for thinking, for having such a thought. He was the catalyst of a supporting cast for many years that could not provide what he provided. Okay? There would be, you could see it. There would be on matches where, and there were very few matches he missed, but on those matches, there would be a palpable drop in the quality of play. You could see it. Now, if we're being honest with ourselves, we would also notice that the ball would move around more because there wasn't the grand focal point that is Cristiano Ronaldo. But what was lacking is, of course, the tenacity for the goals that were being scored that only Ronaldo could bring, okay? But the quality of this national team right now is at an all-time high, okay? And I feel that Ronaldo, hypothetically, would be leaving a national team that is so much better now without him that at any point without him in the last 2 decades of his Seleção service, okay? I think a lot of the fervor that I received from the tweet, maybe from fans who just don't want to see a day that Ronaldo is no longer wearing the jersey. And I completely get that. I mean, we've had 2 decades of excellence from him. A play that we may never see again. The argument is not about who's the greatest of all time when I say that, Messi, Ronaldo, whoever. But a player like Ronaldo, we may never see again. And I completely get that. And the eventual day that he stops playing for the Seleção will be a sad day for football fans everywhere, myself included. Okay. And then there are others who still feel he's like an automatic starter, and he should be the one that calls it a career, not anyone else. I'll agree with the second part of that, not the first part. I don't think he's an automatic starter anymore. And I also saw that I shouldn't make such a statement following a win against Luxembourg, because look at the opponent. Okay, I will tell you right now, this thought didn't just come to my head because of a 9-0 win against Luxembourg. I understand that Ronaldo is a leading goal scorer for Portugal in qualifying so far. But if the 9-0 victory against Luxembourg isn't impressive, why should 2 goals against Luxembourg, 2 goals against Liechtenstein, and a goal against Iceland be impressive? I'm not saying that to be a dick. I'm just using logic that was thrown at me right back to people who provided such logic. Again, I'm not here to pick fights. I'm just here to provide my side of things. I think maybe the biggest mistake I made in the tweet was mentioning Fernand Santos. Because I got a lot of, are you really comparing Ronaldo to Fernand Santos? I mean, based on careers and achievements, of course not. I mean, that clearly is in Ronaldo's favor and forever will be. But there was a wave of supporters back in talking about Fernand Sancho. There was a wave of supporters beginning in 2018 after we lost against Uruguay that started calling for Fernand Sancho to be out. And that grew and grew and grew after disappointing qualifications for Euro 2020 and World Cup 2022 and losing big games at home and deciding games at home to teams like France and Spain and Serbia. And one of the biggest comments that I'd hear and I'd read it that I'd even say is that, you know, this generation of Portuguese players is being done a disservice. This is a missed opportunity with this group of players. If Fernand Sancho is still the manager and giving us his antiquated tactics, and you know, we felt that all the way through the end of his tenure at the end of World Cup 2022. And kind of what the tweet goes back and saying is kind of similar to what I felt about Sancho towards the end, is that it's always okay to praise the manager that brought us that glory in 2016, 100%. But it's also okay to be able to criticize him and be able to say that his time is up. Now, we may not be totally there yet with Cristiano Ronaldo. In fact, I feel that we probably are not. But I think we're as close as we've ever been. And much like the Fernand Sancho situation, I just don't want to see the national team possibly miss an opportunity simply to placate to one player, even if it is the greatest to ever wear the shirt. This national team is very young. And, you know, we have a lot of upcoming players. We have some players in their prime. It's a good mix right now. If Ronaldo was not at Euro 2024, do I fancy our chances? I still think we do very well. Could make a deep run. Could we do the same with him on the team? Personally, yeah, I do feel that way. But it shouldn't be just to placate him, just to make him happy. He cannot be bigger than the team, no matter how big of a contribution he has made. Now, what I want to see in the next 4 games in qualifying is I want him to, and again, he doesn't know me from Adam. He never will. I'd love to see him score goals and be part of a fluid Portuguese attack. But if history shows, that's likely not to happen, at least the second part. And again, what I don't want is to squander another opportunity because someone stayed too long. And I know that's harsh maybe to some fans, but I want Ronaldo to be bought into what the team is doing now, and not that the team has to buy into him, if that makes sense. Okay? So I've said my piece. It's likely that none of what I said in this dissertation, changes anyone's minds. But at the very least, I hope that you guys got more from what I just said than just the tweet that I put out. So I'll let you guys respond if you'd like. That will do it here for episode number 81 of the Seleção podcast. Again, my thanks to Albert and Barney from the Long Ball Futebol Podcast for joining me on the show. We are going to obviously come back in October. I still haven't decided if I'm going to do some pods with the women's national team. Again, I'm not against them at all. I just don't know enough about them. I was excited to see them this summer play, but maybe that's a little bit of a challenge to myself to kind of get more indoctrinated into that national team as well, because they are on the rise. So if anyone's into or wants to kind of see that happen, shoot me a message and I'll be happy to read those messages and see if we can't make something happen. But just good luck to Navigadoras against France and against Norway, and all the best to Francisco Neto and his squad on the 22nd and the 26th of this month. So with that, that'll do it for episode number 81 of the Seleção podcast. My thanks to Albert and to Barney. And we, of course, are proud members. Albert, Barney, and myself are all proud members of Portugal.net with our partnership with Tom Kundert. And as always, folks, Força Portugal!